So I'm Doug McIntyre, one of the two editors of ClimateCrisis247, and I'm with Dave Calloway, who's the other one. We're going to talk about the fact that Ford should not have screwed up the EV business. They had two iconic brands, the F-Series pickup, number one selling vehicle in the United States for 42 years. They have something called the Lightning, which is just the EV version of that. So they've got this phenomenal branding. Then they took the Mustang brand and they slapped it on an electric crossover and called it the Mustang Mach-E. Now, the Mustang is one of the most famous nameplates in history, and they've been selling it since 1964. But if you take a look at both of these things, they've both been utter failures. January, they sold about 2,000 Lightnings and about 1,500 Mach-E's. So, Dave, when you look at that, what happened?
Well, I think it's it's obviously a issue of Ford thinking that demand was going to be greater than anyone expected. I mean, demand for EVs, was pretty strong a couple of years ago, and it's really fallen off a cliff. I think we've gotten to the point where the first adopters who have the money to buy an expensive EV are doing it, but they're finding, now, no one's really come out with a decent low product EV. What Ford decided it would do was try to just slap its brand, its two famous brands, the Lightning and the Ford 150 and the Mustang, on an EV and see if that worked and charge more. And it didn't. It was a dismal failure. And I think probably what we're seeing here is the limits of branding when you're talking about a new type of technology altogether, right? If I have a Ford Mustang, a 2013, and I love it, and it's a great car. And I thought maybe I should turn it in for a Ford Mustang EV, but there's nothing in the EV that appeals to me really like the current Mustang I have. I don't think the design is as good. I don't see it doing as much. There's word that it breaks down more. So I think they're really realizing the limit of those brandings, and probably what they need is a new brand altogether to be their EV brand.
Ford made some horrible unforced errors. So they made a statement in 2021 that they were going to invest $30 billion in their EV efforts by 2025. So that's, 4 or 5 years you're going to put
a lot of money.
A lot of money. They've backed off of that considerably, said they're going to delay it, production delays. These are two things Ford did, and I'm curious as what your reaction is. The first one is they took the Lightning, and because they couldn't figure out how much the materials cost, they changed the price 4 times in 14 months. So that's one unforced error. The other one is it did not occur to them, I don't think, that when you're a dealer, you make most of your money off service. And, with EVs, a lot of the repairs are done by updates over the air. How is it that you don't figure that out if you're Ford ahead of time?
It's not like the dealers weren't saying that in advance. The dealers,
of course,
the dealers had these EVs, forced down their throats. They didn't really want them. And the big automakers, Ford and GM and the like, really just forced them on them. And despite the fact that the dealers were saying, this is what's going to happen. The dealers, Tesla is famous for, going without the dealers, right? You order everything online, and, when your car's ready, they send you some code and tell you where to, what parking lot it's at. There's no dealer to sign anything with and give you a bottle of champagne as you drive off. I'm not sure that's the way to go either. I think we got to find a world in which the dealers are incentivized to sell these things. But to do that, they have to be cool. I I saw a Cybertruck, a Tesla Cybertruck driving in my neighborhood the other day. And you look at the pictures of those things and you're like, who the hell would want to buy something like that? That's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. But as the truck was driving down the street, people were literally cheering and applauding. It looks so cool. And it's because it's different. It has different, it's different than it's electric, to be sure, but it has different attributes. And that's what people like when they buy a car. They want something that's catchy, eye-catching, and cool. And that way, just putting the name of a brand, as famous as it is, like Mustang, on your EV is not going to do anything if the EV isn't new and cool.
Is what you're saying, though, part of the core of this problem? The F-150 Lightning looks exactly like the F-150. I mean,
Oh yeah,
maybe you and I could say, well, there's some little, name tag on there we didn't see before. And the Mustang looks just like a sort of crummy crossover. It looks like a $40,000 crossover that is an EV and has the Mustang badge slapped on it. That is a huge mistake by Ford, isn't it? Just to say, well, they look sort of like everything else. That's okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think what all the automakers are finding now is kind of what Elon Musk knew long ago when he got Tesla moving, is people don't buy cars because they're electric. They don't make a $40,000, $50,000 investment in their transportation because they want to save the world on climate. That factors into the decision. It's one factor, but it's not that people buy cars because they're cool and they're comfortable and they go fast and they have a lot of gadgets and fun things. They're fun to spend time in. And you can't just trade on your past success with a past brand by saying, oh, this is the electric version of that. I think that's what Ford and the others are starting to find out. We're going to need new products.
Ford surrendered to Tesla recently by saying, we're not going to build our own charging stations. We're cutting a deal with Musk to use his charging stations. So I think if I drive up in my Ford Lightning to get my car changed, it says Tesla on the charger. I think that's a strategic mistake. I understand it's expensive to build these things, but should they really have just handed over the means of fueling these cars to Tesla?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Tesla was the early leader in the market. It's got the charging stations out there. To build another network to rival Tesla would take a lot of investment. It's easier just to plug in to their network. And I think it was a brilliant move by Tesla getting to the market first. And now it's rounding up all of its rivals to charge through it. But the other rival networks that have been announced were really not coming together and were requiring too much investment. So whether history proves that it was a mistake for Ford, it certainly wasn't a mistake for Tesla. It was a very good business decision. And there still are some other infrastructure networks. We'll see how that goes. But right now, the Tesla is the leader and growing.
Is Ford just have to hit the reset button? I mean, did they go so far down the wrong path that they need to say, fine, we're going to wipe that slate clean. We're going to start over from an engineering standpoint, product development. We need something that is completely different from what a Ford is today.
I think so. I don't know if they'll wipe the slate clean. Like Ford it's a 100-year-old company. It's survived things before. But they are going to have to look at their EV program and say, what else can we do besides just slapping our existing brands on an electric vehicle? The vehicles have to be cooler. They have to do something different. And it's kind of like a little bit like the airlines, Doug, right? Your main airlines, United, American, Delta, have operated for decades. And if you ask them, kind of what you got going, they're focused on on-time arrival, right? Well, I
Yeah.
buy my ticket expecting to arrive on time. Then along comes JetBlue and Virgin and stuff like that, and they're doing things like changing the lighting and having different forms of service, and it's they're looking for cool things to make the flying experience different, and they were able to grab market share for that. That's what Ford, to some extent GM, and the other large automakers need to do. They're going to need to compete with the Teslas and even the Rivians of this world. Did you see Rivian won a Consumer Reports
Yeah.
award for these guys came out of nowhere, and they've managed to carve a small market share for themselves. It shows that people will pay for and will enjoy a new product. That's what they're going to have to do.
If you look at Ford's history, and as you said, I think Henry Ford launched the company in maybe 1904. Bill Ford, who's the current chairman and has been probably since 1999, said that the Lightning launch was the most important event in his entire career at Ford, which predates when he was the chairman. He's been a bumbler his entire career, and it seems to me like this will end up as sort of being what's written on his tombstone was, I thought that the launch of one of these EVs was going to be the pinnacle of my business lifetime, and look what's happened.
Yeah, it's an abject lesson in trying to satisfy the desires of your customer. Look at what Steve Jobs did in reinventing Apple. Ford can do that, but it needs to think of new ways to reach its customers and new things that they're going to want to buy. And just saying it's electric, we have seen, is not enough.
As you look at Ford going into the future, they are so far behind. I mean, Tesla has a 50% market share in the United States. They're trying to keep that by cutting prices to the consumer. You've got every major car company in the world, BMW, the luxury guys are in this market with EVs. Hyundai is doing very well. So is Kia. I don't think that Ford can ever get a significant EV market share because of that level of competition. Does that seem like a fair statement?
I don't know. I'm not willing to sell them short. Like I said, they've survived for 100 years against rising competition, which has come and gone. But they are going to need to rework their strategy now, their EV strategy. Clearly, their customers want more than just a different type of pickup truck.
Well, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm pessimistic about Ford. You're sort of straddling between pessimism and optimism.
Yeah.
But I appreciate
We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it.
Yeah, we'll have lots of opportunities to return to this subject. Well, take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Take it easy, Doug.